This is a production of World Video Bible School. To God be the glory.
Thank you again for remaining with us in this study in the book of Revelation. It is a great, great story. It is a great victory that we're reading through. Even though we may be living in persecution or people looking down upon us or people hating Christianity, we know we are victors. We are on the winning side. We ended up in verse 11 in chapter 17 last time. And this reads, "And the beast that was and is not is himself also the eighth, and is of the seven, and going to perdition." Confusing wording, isn't it? It certainly can be. But as I mentioned before, we have a theory coming out of this, that Nero, who was horrible, has died, and yet another king is going to arise, Domitian, and take his place, and it is as if Nero died and is coming back to life. Let me read this by a man by the name of Mounts, and I think he has the right of it here. Nero, the epitome of evil and the abuse of power, was and is not. In other words, he lived and ruled, but now he's dead. Yet, according to the myth, he will return to life and once again seize power. Well, they are then going to say, all right, Domitian is actually Nero. They can see there's a difference. The older folk can. But this is the theory that came up, and it is not true. What the message is here in all this language is that there is no end to evil governments. That there is no end of evil government. Somewhere, someplace, somebody is emulating Rome in that it is an evil government. That's simply the way of life. And God has said this is the way it is going to be. He's just recognized it. His omniscience sees it and knows it. And so here we have going on very clearly, God showing us what is happening. And he says he's moving into perdition. That's where they are going to be actually ending up, is in perdition. Total defeat for all of these folks. Where are they going to go? Not to heaven, my friends. Not to heaven. They are going to go to hell. Moving into verse 12 then, "And the 10 horns which you saw are 10 kings who have received no kingdoms as yet, but they receive authority for 1 hour as kings with the beast." They have no kingdom yet, and they are coming. Again, evil government is going to continue with these folks. And what does it mean then when it says 10 horns and 10 kings? Remember, the number 10 simply means completeness, a fullness of them. Not that there's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, up to 10 exactly, precisely. No, we're using figurative language within these visions. It's a figurative number. They just simply stand for all the world powers completely until the end, until Rome is destroyed in this particular case for these folks at that time. It's nothing more than a symbolic number. And how long are they going to rule? It says for 1 hour. In other words, in the scheme of things, a short time. Strictly a very short time. And it says as kings with the beast. The idea is that their association is with the beast himself, and they have no separate power on their own, but are deriving it from the empire at this time. They're deriving it from the empire, so there's no separate power. And so these satraps and these rulers and these kings and everything that you have out there in empire, yes, that's what they are, but where do they get their power and their authority from? from Rome. And ultimately, of course, then from the emperor. And we can see very closely again that these are symbolic numbers. It also says in verse 13 then that they are of one mind. What does it mean, one mind? They're all against Christianity. That's the argument that's being presented here, that they're all against Christianity. They cooperate willingly with the central government. They have not been forced into this relationship. Oh yes, there in many cases they're a captive people, but these people have willingly helped and have taken over these ruling positions with the authority of Rome. And so again, must they answer for their own actions? Yes, they must answer for their own actions in all of this. We're going to move into verse 14 now. Listen carefully. This verse is the theme of the book of Revelation as well as the entire Bible. Here's the key. This verse is it. What is this verse? Those we've been talking about, all these people we've just been talking about, these will make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb will overcome them. For, here's the reason, for he is Lord of lords. He is King of kings. And those with him, called, chosen, faithful. That is it all the way from the beginning. All the way from the beginning of the Bible. This is what it is. But he's drawing our attention back to this. All of these things, all of these people, all of these ways are going to fight against Christianity. Again, listen carefully. Every one of them will lose. Why? Because God here, Christ, is the Lamb of God. He is the Lord of lords. He is the King of kings. Who is superior to him? No one. No power. No government. Nothing is superior to Christ. He is absolute ruler of it all. How are they operating on this earth? Only as he permits them. He puts a limit on their evil, just as Satan had his limits set by God in the book of Job. That book is there just clearly to teach us that lesson, if nothing else, that God sets limits on evil. All right, comes the question then. Who goes into heaven with this victorious Lamb? The called by the gospel, the chosen, or elect, those who have faith in and obey God's plan for saving man, unchanged by any person or group of people, and the faithful, of course, to the end of their physical life or the end of time. So who are these, the faithful ones? They are the called, and as we've discussed before, and again we're going to do it now, these people have been called by the gospel. Thessalonians, the letters to the Thessalonians teach us that. We are called by the gospel. This is not a call that comes from God that we cannot resist. It is not that. We're called by the gospel. And we've delineated what the gospel has been already in this course. And so who are the chosen or the elect? Again, those who elect themselves. How? By obeying the gospel. God has said, as I said before, you're either going to go to hell or you're going to go to heaven. You are going to go to one. You're elected to go to one or the other. You choose which side you are on. And then the faithful to the end. And that's what this letter again is about this way too. Stay faithful to the end. Evil is going to lose. And so stay faithful and be a winner. Now, what is going to be the specific role of us, the called, the chosen, the faithful? What is it? We don't know. This verse doesn't tell us. But we know that we're on the victor's side. In verse 15, what are the waters? Well, those are the unfaithful, all of the unfaithful. Verse 16 teaches us, if nothing else, that a house divided cannot stand. It will fall. When the apostate and idolatrous religious systems have served the evil authorities' purposes, they will be overthrown. Now think about that. The central civil powers are going to overrule or rule over the religions. And isn't that what emperor worship is? That's what it is at this time. And so we have the civil overriding, as it were, ruling religions. Is that still trying to happen today? Yes, it is, by governments all over this world. Governments all over this world are still doing this. Let me read this a little bit for you. Again, this man's name is Morris. There is no cohesion in evil. Wicked men are not just one happy band of brothers. Being wicked, they give way to jealousy and hatred. At the climax, their mutual hatreds will result in mutual destruction. Again, we said it before, and we say it again. The seeds within evil group are there for its own destruction. For its own destruction. It's the hatred that they have for each other and for wanting more and more and more for themselves. All of this will tear them apart. Has not history proven this point for us? Over and over and over. Then in verse 17 we have this phrase, God has put into their hearts. God, in his foreknowledge, knew how they would, of their own free will, fall to these evil enticements. So he uses their evil hearts to accomplish his will. Now what does this say? This said God knows in advance what is going to happen, and he knows what evil men are going to do, so that he is able then to use these evil people to accomplish his own purposes. Biblical proof. Joseph's brothers sold him off as a slave. What ended up happening? He was the second man in all of Egypt ruling when the family needed help. And so this evil of selling the brother off as a slave turned out to be their salvation in the end. All right? Pharaoh, during the plagues. Think about it. He was as evil as he could be, and he wanted to rule these people. But the plagues came, and God said, I will use this then to show the world my might. He used that evil king, evil Pharaoh, to show his way, and he used Moses in that process. Judas betrayed Jesus, replaced by Matthias. But did victory come out of that betrayal? Jesus was crucified and was therefore the perfect sacrifice. The perfect sacrifice. And so God can use the evil of men and turn it around and make it the way he wants it to end. He knows the end from the beginning. He knows what to do to get it to what he wants the end of history to be. He has the knowledge, he has the presence, and he has the ability, the power to make all of this come about. I want to read something here now from a man by the name of Barclay. The truth behind this is that God never loses control of human affairs. In the last analysis, God is always working things together for good. That sounds like Romans 8:28, doesn't it? All things work together for good to those who love God. Those who will love God, all things work together. Again, God's pre-knowledge working through his ability to bring all of these things about. Who is the great then civil power that we have in verse 18? That's Rome. Comes right down to it. That is Rome. All right, let's quickly move into chapter 18, reading the first 8 verses. After these things, I saw another angel coming down from heaven, having great authority, and the earth was illuminated with his glory. And he cried mightily with a loud voice, saying, Babylon the great is fallen, and has become a habitation of demons, a prison for every foul spirit, and a cage for every unclean and hated bird. For all of the nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants on the earth have become rich through the abundance of her luxury. And I heard another voice from heaven saying, Come out of her, my people, lest you share in her sins, and lest you receive of her plagues. For her sins have reached to heaven, and God has remembered her iniquities. Render her just as she rendered to you, and repay her double according to her works in the cup which she has mixed for her double. In the measure that she glorified herself and lived luxuriously, in the same measure give her torment and sorrow. For she says in her heart, I will sit as queen and am no widow, and will not see sorrow. Therefore her plagues will come in one day, death and mourning and famine, and she will be utterly burned with fire, for strong is the Lord God who judges her. And that's been our theme, hasn't it, all the way through here? God who judges. Chapter 18, Babylon the Great has fallen. Rome has fallen. These people under that empire, they're being told it's coming. The end of this evil empire is coming. Is it coming tomorrow? The next day? Next week? Next year? No, but it's coming. It is coming. As sure as God is, the end is coming. Again, reading from Mr. Mounce. The author of Revelation is not at this point discussing how believers are to live under normal circumstances within the state. He is portraying, in a prophetic manner, the ultimate collapse of a monstrous anti-Christian world order determined to defeat the purpose of God in history. That sums it up pretty well, doesn't it? That God is in control. All things are going to be brought to the end that he has set, that he desires. And so we have another great and glorious angel coming from heaven with this message. And his message is very, very simple. The defeat of evil is complete. You get that? The defeat of evil is complete. He says that there is a prison for every foul spirit. The place of their greatest freedom has become their prison. Now think about that. Their greatest freedom has been what? In sin? In sin has been their greatest thing in their physical thing. In this physical world, the sin. But that affects spiritual things. And what? It becomes their prison. The sin becomes their prison. And then it says a cage for every unclean and hated bird, a haunt. This is literal. And what is it referring to? Back in history, literal Babylon was so destroyed, it became a physical haunt for wild birds and for wild animals. And he's saying that this is going to happen. Now, does it happen in the physical world? No, but it will in the spiritual. It will in the spiritual. Verse 3 then. Whether rulers of nations or the business world, They have all fallen under the sins of Babylon, or in this case, Rome. And so what is the call in verse 4? Come out. Do not follow their evil deeds. The brethren must have really been tempted at this point. Think about that for a minute. You're in trouble financially. You're having a hard time supporting yourself and your wife and your children, or whatever part of the family you are. You're having a very difficult time. And it just seems that everything is going apart, but all I have to do is burn a little pinch of incense to the emperor and say that Caesar is God. That's all I have to do. And you know what? Life can change with that. I could all of a sudden get work. I can be able to support my family. I can even become wealthy under certain circumstances. All I have to do is say he is a God. Is that a real temptation? I'm going to tell you it is. A man who loves his wife and family, that's a great temptation. But God says, stay faithful to me. Stay faithful to me. That is what you have to do. So come out from among them. He wants them then also to know that what the consequences are going to be if they do give in and fall. He knows that they will suffer just, he will share in their suffering because he is sharing in their evil doings. Why? Why will they share? Verse 5 tells us, listen, for her sins have reached to heaven. Her sins are now full, and it is time for punishment. And again, I've referred you back to the Amorites in Genesis chapter 15. Why were they not removed from the land at that time? Because their sins were not yet full. And now Babylon, Rome, her sins are full. It is time for her to end. And then it says that God remembered her. Had he forgotten her? No. It's impossible for God to forget anything. If he is not omniscient, he's not God. And so he has not forgotten. So the idea is that he is remembering them with action. Just as he remembered Noah with action. He hadn't forgotten Noah, but he remembered him with action. And then we have this phrase in here, double and same measure. The idea is that punishment will be measured absolutely to the full and based exactly upon what she had done. Not that she will be punished doubly, but absolutely complete. No sin left unpunished. And so again, it isn't the idea of double punishment. It is full, complete punishment. She had lived luxuriously. You know, that can also be translated headstrong pride. Some words can be translated different ways, and this is one of them. But it says that she has been a queen and claims to never be a widow. In other words, she is a queen in her own right. Not because she'd been married to a king and has now been widowed, but she is a queen in her own right. She became queen through her own powers. And isn't that what Babylon did? Isn't that what Rome did? Yes. And so she claims she is the greatest, and she has gotten there by her own will. And it says also she will see no sorrow. That's what she's thinking anyway. And there's another one of those double negatives. I will not see sorrow, is what it says. And this is an illusion, my friends. This is an illusion of the wealthy, the prosperous, the powerful in every single age. This happens all the time. Don't we feel secure in this? Don't people always feel secure in this? This is the same for ordinary people. We're comfortable in this life and we think it's just going to go on, and we live as if it's going to be forever. So it is now with Rome at this point. She is successful. She is powerful. She rules most of the world. And it's just like this is going to be going on forever and ever and ever. Nothing is ever going to change. This is the feeling that she is exuding at this point, that she is putting forward. Is it going to be that way? No. God has other plans, and here in verse 8 it comes out. It is going to come in one day. It's not going to be foreseen. It's going to come suddenly to her. All right, let's move on in through verses 9 through 20. And the kings of the earth who committed fornication and lived luxuriously with her will weep and lament for her when they see that the smoke of her burning. I'm going to quit there because our time is getting short, but I wanted to point out some things here. People are going to mourn. Those who had participated in her evil and had lived luxuriously just like she had. And they're going to weep and lament for them when they see her burning. Is it going to be because they've loved her? No, no, no. That is not what it is going to be. They're standing off at a distance. They were afraid to come closer. They didn't want to be involved in the things that she was being involved in. Now, they didn't want to be involved in the punishments now, but they stand back. They partook of her sins before, and they will partake of her punishments now. Did they love her? No. But they don't want to be associated with her now that evil has come. And we're going to pick up right exactly at this point in the next session. See you then.